You've reached the Narrow Way Podcast. Leave a message after the beep.
When was the last time you heard a sermon on not only the gate, but the way? He says, there is one gate, but after that gate there is a narrow way. There is no way to come through this narrow gate except you strip down and strip away all self-sufficiency and all self-righteousness, and you humble yourself and you come as a little child into the kingdom of heaven, and it is a narrow gate whereby you can only come.
You're listening to the Narrow Way Podcast.
Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, Romero, año y felicidad. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas.
I don't think so. I don't think it can ever be too soon for Christmas music. After all, it is after Veterans Day. By the way, make sure and thank a veteran for their service. Huge day on November 11th, and that is, in fact, why we as a nation are free. I did some traveling over the weekend with my lovely wife, and we spent about 4.5 hours in the vehicle, and as all good evangelical Christians do, we listen to Fox News Radio on satellite radio, Sirius XM, because we're Protestant. And for the entire 4-hour trip, the one thing that always happened at the top of every broadcast, at the top of every show, was they led the story off with a guy named Roy Moore, and there is an R in parentheses before his name, but more importantly, there is a C in parentheses before his name. Not only is he a Republican candidate for Jeff Sessions' old spot in Alabama, but he is also, and far more importantly, a self-proclaimed professing Christian. And I'm sure unless you've hid your head under a rock for the past week, you have seen and heard about the allegations thrown his way about him dating underage girls. And I'm trying to sanitize this the best I can for the little ears that could be listening. But he was accused of doing some pretty nasty stuff. And again, just like the Harvey Weinstein bit, Harv, I think we have to use this for self-examination, and we have to realize that this guy is pro-traditional marriage, pro-10 Commandments, pro-life. He's a solid Christian by anyone's standards, and we still have to give him the benefit of the doubt. We have to give him the presumption of innocence. And when we hear he gave an interview with Sean Hannity where, admittedly, he did not look good, and he did not look innocent. He didn't sound innocent. But the presumption of innocence is something that we have to hold to, and we have to hold him to. We have to remember that he is very unpolished. He's not the typical politician. He hasn't spent 30 years in D.C. and been coached with how to say and what to say it. He is not swampified yet, to borrow Mark Stein's term. He hasn't been in the swamp. He hasn't gotten greasy and slimy. We have to remember that. But like I talked about with old Harvey, our good buddy Harvey, we have to keep perspective in mind also. You know, I was talking to my wife about this, and I know it shouldn't be this way, but with people that we are maybe politically at odds with, we tend to root for sin, don't we? When we hear that Bill Clinton, trying to sanitize this, was dating Monica Lewinsky, for lack of a better term, in the Oval Office, we almost rooted for it and said, yep, that figures. He's a Democrat, he's a lowlife, he's a bum, he's a scumbag, and that just figures, isn't it? I'll bet it's true. Guaranteed it's true. I almost hope it's true. I almost do, because that means that we would be better. We would be superior as, no, not as Christians, as Republicans. We would have the political advantage. And we get so wrapped up and rooted in politics, we forget what is truly important. And we forget, Bill Crosby, Louis C.K., Kevin Spacey, Anthony Weiner, Ted Kennedy. The list goes on. And for all of these guys, you catch yourself rooting for sin. And as Christians, we have to remember that we are not rooting for sin, even if it would help us in the political circle. We don't want anybody to be living a lifestyle of sin. We want them to be pure and righteous, just as God intends them to be and wants them to be. So with Roy Moore, not only do we not root for sin, and because he's our political ally and not our adversary, I don't think we would, but when we hear something about, let's say, Anthony Weiner, we can't fall into the trap of rooting for sin and hoping that that is true. You hear stuff about Eric Boeing and Roger Ailes, and you heard something about Sean Hannity even, and he threatened to sue Fox News, I guess, via Twitter. And by the way, our Twitter handle on the Narrowway podcast is NarrowwayPod at Twitter. Just a side note. But at any rate, you hear about all of this stuff from these right-wingers, and you root against the sin. No, that can't possibly be true. But all I'm saying is measure with the same stick for both sides. If you're going to hold one side to a certain standard, hold the exact same other side to that standard. It's all about perspective, and we have to remember that we as Christians, it's amazing. Paul says in one of his epistles that we're going to judge angels. We have to practice judgment, but we have to practice discerning and judging rightly the way God would want us to, and using the Bible as our measuring stick, as our judgment. We can't mete out judgment unfairly with Democrats and then let stuff with Republicans slide. And vice versa. If you're a Democrat, you have to remember, take the abortion issue, for example. It cuts both ways. It really does. It's a two-edged sword that's highly dangerous, but if you use it as a surgeon's scalpel, it can be highly effective. And if you're a Democrat, think about perspective this way. Abortion. Why do you approve of abortion, supposedly? Well, because the mother, it's the rights of the mother, and it's her body, and we can't tell her what to do. It's her body, and we can't tell her, and it's, what about the mother? And it's the mother, and the mother. Why don't we think just a little bit about what happens if we abort a girl? She could be a mother someday. What about her rights? Aren't they just as important? Well, yeah, I know, but the mother, and then what if, the mother could die in childbirth? Well, yeah, but that's not the desired outcome of abortion. If you have to choose between the life of the mother and the life of the baby, then I think most of us will agree that we choose the life of the mother. But that's not an abortion. That's merely a consequence of a procedure in which we are not trying to kill anyone. That's not abortion, and we have to remember that. Abortion is the willful taking of another human life, and it's all about perspective. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. Each issue you have to be looking through pure lenses from a neutral point of view. Otherwise, you're going to be caught in these double standards, just like Anthony Weiner, just like Ted Kennedy, just like Bill Clinton, just like Louis C.K. And the problem and the danger with that is if we hold them to one standard, they're going to hold us to the exact same standard, and all of a sudden, before you know it, we're just as bad, if not worse than they are. And as Christians, we need to be better than they are. We need to be setting an example. We need to be setting a bar to which the world aspires to be, or go over, or whatever. It's your analogy, you fix it. But at any rate, keep that in mind. Perspective, highly important. We'll be back right after the break. Here is Legacy 5.
With just a mighty brush stroke and a flick of the wrist,
When you got the rainbow at your fingertips.
God had a hand in it. My God had a hand in it. His master plan did it. It all began with it. There ain't no big bang about it. There may be those who doubt it. They just refuse to get it. God had a hand in it.
Legacy 5, everybody. Legacy 5. Good sound. How does God have a hand in it? How do we prove that God has a hand in it? Very interesting question, and I think you'll get asked that a lot if you're doing witnessing and or open-air preaching. And like the Lee Strobel books go about showing, a lot of atheists, and by the way, if you haven't read the Lee Strobel books, Case for Faith, Case for Christ, Case for a Creator, I think they're very important resources that every Christian should have in his or her library. They're excellent books. But we can shoot down an atheist worldview and reasoning by just asking them questions. Isn't it amazing? Because they have no legitimate, thought-through answers for their worldview. And I think just a few questions we can ask them, 6 questions to ask an atheist. Number 1, where did we come from? Well, you see, we came from the Big Bang, and the apes and everything, they morphed, and we started out as tadpoles, and then they became apes, and pretty soon Neanderthals, and then, of course, you dug up Lucy, and then, okay, but where did we come from? Well, the Big Bang. Well, where'd the Big Bang come from? Well, there was a bunch of molecules, and they got trapped in something the size of a period on a page, and it exploded. And okay, where'd that come from? Well, the black suitcase and the cosmic suitcase, and okay, where'd that come from? Well, you don't have a reason. You don't know where God came from. Yes, we do. He always has and always will be. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He is eternal. That means there is no beginning to God. He always has and always will be. And, well, that's a cop-out because you don't know where he came from. Yes, I do. He never came from anything. He's God. He's eternal. And that's the Bible. That's what the Bible says. We have a reason behind it. Well, the reason is just the Bible. Right, that's all it needs. It's totally inspired, and you can prove that also very succinctly. So where did we come from? Well, apes, more or less. Much less, but whatever. Okay, number 2. Well, what caused it? Why? What caused the cosmic suitcase to get squeezed into something the size of a period on a page? And what caused that period to explode in the Big Bang? And what caused slime to crawl out of the cosmic goop 6.7 million years ago or whatever they're up to now? It changes so frequently. What caused all of that? Well, and they have no answer for that. Next question you can ask him, number 3. Because number 2 was what caused it. Number 3, why do we have morals? If we're just nothing but glorified animals and we're just the ones, survival of the fittest and all that, why do we have morals? Animals don't have morals. If a little rabbit is drinking at the watering hole, a lion is not going to wait for him to finish drinking before he eats the rabbit. There are no morals. They don't get married. They don't worry about stealing. They don't worry about eating other animals. They don't have morals. But we're just men. Well, we are. We're just animals, and that's all there is to it. And that's why everything is there is no right and wrong. It's all in the eye of the beholder, and blah, 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 blah. Humanism. Bah. Humanism. Postmodernism. Bah. Well, we do have morals. And it's not social conditioning. It's something that God programmed into us. We have morals because God gave us morals. He made that manifest, even before the 10 Commandments. Cain knew it was a sin to kill his brother Abel. He knew that before the 10 Commandments, before God made it clear, thou shalt not kill. He made that clear. He also made it clear that thou shalt not covet before the 10 Commandments. And Cain still coveted Abel's sacrifice and Abel's good standing with God. And he still knew it was wrong. Why? Because God gave us a moral compass. An atheist can't explain moral compasses. Number 4, are there no absolutes? Because most atheists are also humanists, which are also postmodernists, which means, well, I think I'm Oprah Winfrey. And you can't tell me otherwise because I think I am, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. No absolute statements. Well, nothing is absolutely true. Well, is that an absolute statement? Are you absolutely sure nothing is absolute? Question number 5. If God is real, would you deny your earthly and carnal loves to follow him? And I think that's very telling because, as it says in Timothy, I think, one of the Timothys, those Timothys were good guys, by the way. Paul wrote each of them a letter. I don't know if they were twins or what, but they were good guys. And a lot of stuff we can learn from Paul's letter to both of the Timothys. But it does say somewhere in the Bible, again in Paul's epistles, that, and it also says it in Psalms, by the way, that we as human beings not only are programmed with a moral compass, which can be fine-tuned with the Holy Spirit, not only are we programmed with that, but we're also programmed with the knowledge of God. The glories of the heaven declare his handiwork. You can't look around at this magnificent creation that God has blessed us with and go, nah, I think it just happened on its own. Yeah, no, we are intelligently designed, but that's because we were intelligent enough to adapt and evolve. You can't do that. It's impossible. So deep down, I believe that every person does know that there is a God, and most people deny him so they can go about living the way they want to live and not having to put their head on their pillow at night and feel guilty for the way they live. So most people, I think, do realize there is a God. So when you ask them the question, if God is real, would you deny your earthly and carnal loves or lusts to follow him? And that's very telling because 9 times out of 10, I think they will say no, because he is immoral and unjust and blah, 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 blah. And he hasn't given us a sign. So no, I wouldn't. But yet when they go home after that witness encounter, after being asked that question, I think that they will think about that an awful lot, because the fool saith in his heart, there is no God. But I think everybody deep down realizes and knows there is a God and that they are, in fact, his creation. Now, that's what you can ask an atheist. You also have to be prepared for questions that atheists will ask you. Are you prepared? A few very quick things that happen all the time, that get asked all the time of Christians, is how can a loving God send us to hell? If there is a God, and if there is a hell, and if there is a heaven, how can he send us to hell? He's not sending you to hell. You are. Your sins are sending you to hell. If a loving God is also a just God, and we know that he is, why should he let sin slide? Why should he allow you to rebel and shake your fist against him your entire life, against an eternal, loving, merciful God, and expect to give you a free pass at the end of your life for all eternity? That's not a just God. If a judge, and you hear this analogy all the time from Ray Comfort, and it's a very fine one, I might add. If a good judge overlooks rape, overlooks murder, overlooks all kinds of wickedness and lawlessness, and gives the person a free pass, he's not a good judge. He's not a just judge. He has no scruples. God is a just God, but he is also extraordinarily merciful, and he makes that mercy manifest through his Son, Jesus Christ. You don't send yourself to hell. Your sin does. You send yourself to hell. And the best fire insurance out there is loving and accepting the forgiveness that Jesus will offer to you freely as a free gift. And then, like John says, if we continue in sin and if we continue in darkness and say that we are with him, we lie and we deceive ourselves. So after you accept that grace, that forgiveness, that love, that mercy from a just judge, then go out there and live for Jesus because he died for you. And remember, whether you're walking, running, or crawling, keep walking on that narrow way.